Please.
Will you pardon the people who are accused of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer?
I'm going to look at it. I will take a look at it. It's been brought to my attention. I did watch the trial. It looked to me like somewhat of a railroad job. I'll be honest with you. It looked to me like some people said some stupid things. You know, they were drinking, and I think they said stupid things. But I'll take a look at that. And a lot of people are asking me that question from both sides, actually. A lot of people think they got railroaded.
That was Donald Trump's response to being asked if he'll pardon the men convicted of plotting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. You know, they were drinking, and I think they said stupid things. They were drinking. That's Trump's explanation for a kidnapping plot that involved conducting surveillance on Whitmer's vacation home, planning to blow up a nearby bridge, and literally hatching a scheme to grab a sitting governor and start a civil war. But hey, boys will be boys, you know? Locker room talk, am I right? Let me be crystal clear about what we're talking about. A federal judge sentenced the ringleader of this group, Barry Croft Jr., to over 19 years in prison and handed Adam Fox, another key player, 16 years. Authorities said that the cabal wanted to grab Whitmer at her vacation home and incite a war over her response to the COVID pandemic. This wasn't some drunken fraternity prank. It was domestic terrorism, and it was prosecuted accordingly.
Federal prosecutors kicked off the trial by telling the jury that when it came to allegedly planning and training to attack Governor Whitmer's summer home in Elk Rapids with the goal of kidnapping the governor, members of the militia group Wolverine Watchmen, Adam Fox, Barry Croft, Daniel Harris, and Brandon Caserta, prosecutors say, quote, they were not all talk. They wanted to make sure they were all action. Prosecutors presented new details of just how violent and potentially deadly the alleged kidnapping plan was, saying the men openly talked about shooting and killing the governor's security detail and any police they encountered when they launched their attack.
But according to Trump, that qualifies as a railroad job, in his words. These men were convicted by a jury after prosecutors proved that they conducted surveillance, planned explosives, and organized a conspiracy to kidnap a sitting governor. But then I guess we shouldn't be surprised that Donald Trump, of all people, views the legitimate prosecutorial process as a sham, considering he himself was subjected to it and he didn't like that. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, everything is about them. It's worth noting, too, that the Justice Department's new pardon attorney, Ed Martin, who used to be the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., and was a big fan of the Stop the Steal insurrectionists, called the case a Fednapping plot, an apparent reference to the use of undercover FBI agents and informants to build the case, and invoked the convictions as a potential instance of the weaponization of government. So Trump's own Justice Department is already laying the groundwork to frame domestic terrorists as victims of the deep state. Only these clowns could turn a legitimate kidnapping plot from right-wing domestic terrorists into a situation where they become the victims. And by the way, let's not forget the context here. Trump clashed with Whitmer back in 2020 where he tweeted, "Liberate Michigan."
On April 17th, he tweeted, "Liberate Michigan." President Trump tweeting directly at Governor Whitmer. He says she's done a terrible job. She locked down her state for everyone except her husband's boating activities. He took credit for the foiled plot against the governor and added, rather than say thank you, she calls me a white supremacist.
Hate groups heard the president's words not as a rebuke, but as a rallying cry, as a call to action. When our leaders speak, their words matter. They carry weight. When our leaders meet with, encourage, or fraternize with domestic terrorists, they legitimize their actions, and they are complicit. When they stoke and contribute to hate speech, they are complicit.
Like, think about that for a minute. Trump stoked anti-government sentiment. Domestic terrorists took that as a call to action, as they so often do when it comes to Donald Trump. And then Trump was mad that Whitmer didn't thank him when the FBI stopped the plot that Trump himself helped stoke. And now he wants to pardon the plotters because they were drinking and saying stupid things. If you had any doubt that we live in the dumbest and most dangerous timeline, this should put things to rest. But this isn't happening in a vacuum. Since returning to office, Trump has turned the pardon power into a reward system for political loyalty and conservative credentials. Trump, on his first day in office, granted blanket clemency to those who were charged with being involved in the January 6th insurrection, issuing roughly 1,500 pardons and commuting the sentences of 14 other people. That was on day one, pardoning virtually every January 6th rioter, including violent felons who assaulted police officers, because something back the blue. Then came the parade of Republican criminals. Donald Trump pardoned reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley, who were convicted of tax evasion and bank fraud after conspiring to defraud banks in the Atlanta area out of more than $30 million in loans by submitting false documents. Why did he do that? Because Savannah Chrisley, their daughter, spoke at the 2024 Republican National Convention, the RNC, where she talked about her parents' imprisonment, where she said that they were prosecuted by rogue prosecutors, echoing Trump's exact rhetoric about the criminal justice system. That's the admission price to Trump's pardon factory. Speak at the RNC and call yourself the Trumps of the South. Then there's Scott Jenkins, a former Virginia sheriff who was sentenced to 10 years in prison for allegedly making several businessmen sheriff's deputies in exchange for cash. The government's evidence against Jenkins included undercover video and other corroborating evidence showing Jenkins accepting over $75,000 in exchange for giving law enforcement authority to local folks, as well as 2 undercover FBI agents. But Jenkins was a Trump supporter, so suddenly bribery becomes weaponization of the Justice Department. And then there's Michelle Fiore, the woman Trump supporters literally called Lady Trump, the former Las Vegas city councilwoman and state lawmaker who ran unsuccessfully in 2022 for state treasurer, was found guilty in October of 6 counts of federal wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. What did she do? Federal prosecutors said at the trial that Fiore had raised more than $70,000 for the statue of a Las Vegas police officer who was fatally shot in 2014 in the line of duty, but had instead spent some of that money on cosmetic surgery, rent, and her daughter's wedding. Pretty depraved, huh? And of course, Trump pardoned her because she was a loyal supporter, and after all, that's all that matters. This really isn't complicated. Donald Trump's pardons right now mark a continuation of his first-term trend of granting clemency to political loyalists. The criteria for a Trump pardon is simple. Be a Republican, be loyal to Donald Trump, and preferably get convicted of crimes that benefit Trump or hurt his enemies. Attack police officers on January 6th? Pardoned. Steal money from a dead cops memorial fund? Pardoned. Take bribes as sheriff? Pardoned. Defraud banks out of millions? Pardoned if you speak at the RNC. And now Trump wants to add domestic terrorists to that list, because apparently plotting to kidnap a Democratic governor qualifies as drinking and saying stupid things. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.